All right. Hi, and welcome to the Red Bra Project. We are here today with an awesome, creative, talented guest we cannot wait to introduce everybody to. I want to give a quick hello to my beautiful co-host over there. I'm liking the leopard, Shauna.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little wild and crazy these days, so animal print is the way to go. How
That
are
is,
you doing today? I'm loving the book and the flowers. It's all so perfect.
yeah, thanks. It's those little things you got to grab onto, right? You got to make your space
Yes,
feel good.
I agree. As I sit in front of a white door.
Yeah, well, your leopard is saying a lot. So.
Yeah, that's true. I wanted to stand down. So
So today we are so excited to be here with you all for episode number 59 on the Red Bra Project with our guest, Lauren Bateman, who was actually nominated from one of her students. You're going to learn here a little bit about her story and what she does for the Red Bra Project. So I'm going to give you a quick shout out to her student, who happens to be my dad, who found Lauren and was amazed by her story and what she's doing out there, and said, you know what, I think this woman would be great for the Red Bra Project. I said, well, Pops, you have some connections, so let's make an introduction. So Lauren, welcome to the Red Bra Project. We're so happy to have you. How about you start off by telling us a little bit about where you're coming from today and about your story?
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. I think that's so awesome that your dad does the guitar with me, so such a cool connection. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, so it's a lovely rainy day here today. And I'm actually a music teacher. I didn't start that way, and we'll probably get into that as we get into my story more, but I was actually, my degree's in biology and archaeology, so I have more of a science background. But I just really, really loved music. Music was my passion. And I decided that one day I was going to quit my job to pursue music in some way or some form. And I started teaching because, hey, you have to make money in the beginning, you know, when you're a musician and you just quit your job. So I started teaching, and it turns out I was actually pretty good at it, unbeknownst to me. And I started teaching some students out of a home studio that I had, and eventually upgraded to a commercial space. And now I have 3 commercial spaces, and I have an online platform that I teach students guitar now, kind of all over the world, which is really cool.
that's so awesome. And I apologize. I didn't realize that I'm an hour south of you in the Fall River area. So
Oh,
we are
look at that.
neighbors. I should
Fantastic.
start, after this, I might start playing guitar. So take us back a little bit. Before all of this started, talk to us a little bit about your journey and a little bit more about you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know people are always like, tell us about like your challenges. And I just think life is always has its challenges. And I don't see my life as kind of extraordinary, but I know to people on the outside that can always seem like a different thing. But like I said, yeah, I mean, I'm from the Boston area. I grew up here. You know, I come from a divorced home. We weren't like rich by any means. I started on piano and absolutely hated it. And you know, we didn't have a lot of money to do music lessons and a lot of extracurriculars. So when we decided to start up on the guitar, my sister bought me a guitar as a confirmation present when I was 16. And my mom was like, don't do it. She's not going to use it. It's going to go to waste. Like, don't even waste your money. Because my sister was in college. So my sister's older. And I guess one of the people in the dorm was selling their guitar with their VHS how to play guitar program. So that's how I started. It was some like probably like 80s rock guy with like this with really long hair. It was quite classic for the time. And so yeah, I mean, my mom was like, just, you know, don't do it. She's going to waste it. So I never got guitar lessons myself because, you know, I kind of wasted the piano lessons, and my parents weren't going to just waste money for me to throw it out the window. But, you know, I did that for a while, just kind of on my own, you know, picking things up here and there. But I decided to go to school. I went to Boston University, and like I said, my degree is in biology and archaeology. I really loved science, and I ended up working, once I graduated, I worked for cancer research at a pharmaceutical company, which had a special place for me because when I was younger, I did have Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 16, which was interestingly about the time I started playing guitar. So that was, I think it was a good little outlet for me to have. And I think that's maybe why it stuck and sticks with me today. But so I worked for a pharmaceutical company for a number of years doing cancer research. And like I said, I went on a cruise. It was called Kayamo, and it was basically this folk festival on a cruise. And I brought my guitar, and some Brandy Carlisle was on there before Brandy Carlisle was like kind of like a household name, before she did like Grammys and all that. And I performed in some of the lounges there. It was kind of like a free for all on this boat, and it was all music, and I loved it. And I was just like, I need to do more of this. As much as I love science, I love math and all that stuff, it just wasn't something that was really like calling to me. Music, for some reason, I just kept going back there. And I was like 26 at the time, and I myself hadn't even taken a guitar lesson at this point. So I decided that, hey, maybe I should find a guitar teacher to teach me how to play this thing better. Because I was decent, but I was like, I always felt like I could be better as a musician. So that's what I did. I started taking lessons, and it led me into performing and recording. I've recorded a couple albums and all of that. And that's kind of getting me back to where we are here today. And now I'm doing this whole online thing, which is awesome.
Wow. Lauren, you have it's such a fun, incredible, inspiring story. So first of all, it's so great to see you on this side of Hodgkin's and everything. And that's part of your story, and doing so well. And then, to think about the timing of everything coming into your life at that age, and your outlet, and literally a scientist turned musician, and you're a self-taught musician. So when you started to kind of decide to make that pivot, did you ever feel like, I can't do this, I don't have the background, I'm already this old, I haven't ever had a real guitar course? Like, how was that, and how did you talk yourself into continuing down that path when you wanted to take the right turn?
Yeah, so that was always something kind of in the back of my head, because like I said, I don't have a degree in music, and I figured, or I made the false assumption that would be really important to people who wanted to learn music or learn to play an instrument, that like they would constantly be thinking like, did you go to Berkeley? Because I'm in Boston. And it was really funny because no one actually ever asked me. I think I have one person in my entire life ask me where I went to school and what my degree was in. But other than that, it made me realize that, people aren't always looking for that. It's more about what they want to get out of something. And it took me a while to get over that, because I was definitely self-conscious about not having a degree in music and never having, taught. I don't have a degree in education. I really was going out of left field on here. So the turning point was, I said, you know what? This was, I'm married now, but this was my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now, but this was like 10 years ago. And I had a guitar, and it was a really simple song. It was Ode to Joy. And I just said to her, I said, listen, could you just humor me for a few minutes? I just want to try and teach you a lesson on how to play this really, really simple song. So we sat down, and I kind of gave her an informal lesson. She started playing the guitar. I ripped it out of her hands, ran into the next room, and built a website. And she was like, what happened? I was like, I forgot when you're a beginner how hard it is to play a single note. And I said, I can do this. And it made me realize that compared to someone who had never touched a guitar before, I was an expert in some sense or some form. So that gave me kind of a very big mental shift that like, okay, this is possible if I work with these people. And still to this day, I always tell people, I'm not Jimi Hendrix, I'm not Eddie Van Halen, I'm not like the greatest guitar player in the world, but I'm really good at helping people have fun on the guitar, especially beginners. And really, if they want to get into like really advanced music theory stuff, that's not me. I'm not like, then you need the university person, because I know the basics, but that's a whole nother level of playing. But yeah, that was kind of the turning point. It was just recognizing that I had something of value and some knowledge that could help someone.
And your partner's sitting there like, was that wrong? Did I play a bad note?
Just like, what happened? I was like, thank you. Let's go.
There's so many things to pull from that are just so inspiring. I mean, I think you don't give enough credit to the fact that people might want to be in your shoes, have this other degree and want to learn this. So you give inspiration in that sense. They don't care that you don't have that music degree because they don't either and they want to learn it. I know you're saying they're not asking, but I
Well,
think
it's
that
funny.
there's just some hope for them too.
Yeah, it will come up usually after they've taken lessons with me for like 2 or 3 years. This was when I was teaching in person here in Boston. And we'd start talking and it would come up that, oh yeah, I went to Boston University. And they're like, oh, we thought you went to Berkeley. Like they just assumed because I was a guitar teacher and from Boston that I would go to Berkeley. I was like, oh no, I went to Boston University. And like, oh, but your degree's in music. And I'm like, no, my degree's in archaeology and biology. And they're like, well, what the hell are you doing teaching guitar at music school? So then we would obviously go down the same path that we just went down. But I always tell them, like, see, we have more in common than you think. Like, I don't have a degree and I can do this. You don't have a degree, so you can do it too.
I think that's huge. You're so relatable and you use the word fun, but I mean, you just exude fun. It makes me feel like I would not have pressure. I have never played the guitar like Charles, I've strummed, but you know, if I said that, I'm like, all right, no pressure. This is going to be cool. You know, like you just give off that fun, relaxed vibe. And I think it's super relatable, especially to the beginners.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important thing. And like I said, you know, I think that's a strong point that I don't have a degree in music because I don't get caught up in all of the technicality of a lot of things. And not to say that, I mean, there's some great teachers. I mean, I own a music school. I have amazing guitar teachers who have degrees in music and they're phenomenal. But just because you have a degree doesn't necessarily make you a good teacher. They're two, you know, being able to play an instrument and being able to teach an instrument are two very different skill sets. And I think it's important, you know, if you want to be a good teacher, that you always have to keep in mind what the student wants as opposed to like what your goals are. And I think for a lot of guitar teachers, that's frustrating because they don't like teaching the kid, you know, the kid or the adult, the same simple things over. They want to do like these really awesome advanced things. And I really love the simple things. You know, I could do the same thing over and over again. I've had a lot of parents say I have the patience of a saint, but I'm not sure about that. But yeah, no, I you know, I think that's just me and my personality. I enjoy the process.
And I love that you called yourself an expert because I think that's perfect. You know, that's confidence. That's you knowing you watched your partner try and play and you were like, wait a minute, no. And you knew enough what would be able to teach somebody. And so I just think that alone and what you just said too. I mean, there are so many people that are focused on music that don't know how to teach.
Right.
And just because you don't have that degree, I just think I think it's a skill. I don't even know that it can fully be taught in a school of education.
And I think that's the thing that holds a lot of people back because they're like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't have this. And I mean, obviously, if you want to be a doctor, you have to go to medical school. There's certain things that you have to do. I'm not saying, you know, for those things, but, you know, for a lot of people, I want to do this, but even with playing guitar, I want to do this, but I don't have enough talent, assuming that you need talent to play guitar, which you don't, because I'm the only one in my family who plays an instrument. So there's no talent. But also too, like people, even other entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, I'd really love to do this, but I need my day job, or, but I need the, you know, there's some excuse or there's some fear. And I think when you guys gave me a questionnaire, one of your questions is like about fear. And for me, I think this is where being sick when I was younger has a benefit because a lot of people have fear of like the unknown and what happens. And I more have a fear of not knowing what will happen. It's kind of like a very different perspective because I think when you're sick when you're younger, and coming to terms with the real fact that, hey, I could, you know, I might not live till 20. And fortunately, here I am 20 years later, which is phenomenal. But there's still always that fear of like, hey, this might come back. I might get sick again. You know, I might not make it to, you know, my aunt died. She was 51. She died of pancreatic cancer. And that's about when I was 26 and made this decision. It was like, okay, no, if I've only got 25 years left on this earth, then I gotta do something that like makes me feel alive for those last 25 years. So that was really a big push. So I use fear as like a positive thing for me. So when I'm scared of something, I think more about like what will happen if I don't do it, or how I'll feel if I don't do it. And you know, there's so many excuses we can put in front of why we can't do something. But I think if the reasons are big enough, that fear goes away. It's still there, but you can use it better.
I love that. And I think, oh, go ahead, Renee.
No, go. You go. I'll go after you.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that fear does drive us, and so you being able to pivot, it's huge, because I think now in the pandemic, as where I was going with this, we have so many people that, oh, I'll do it next year. Well, next year is this year, and this year isn't what anybody planned. And so you jumping and taking that chance is just proof of why waiting, you can't.
Yeah, you just don't know. And it was even when I started my online project, and I didn't talk about this actually in the questionnaires, but I had worked with a mentor at the time, and you basically weren't allowed to do anything online. And I had to walk away from that mentor. We had a bit of a falling out. It was a really kind of like negative thing to happen, but I had to do this for myself because I felt like I was really limiting myself. I wanted to reach more people, and there's only so many people you can teach one-on-one before your time is gone. And that wasn't why I quit my job. I didn't quit my job to like just work another job. I wanted something different. So I started this online thing, 3 years ago, and it started really taking off just the end of last year. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit, and like my online business like took off, and I was just like, so you don't, like you said, nobody plans for 2020, but right. You never know when it's going to happen. And I am so fortunate that I had, my business is still operating. We did see a little bit, decline in sales, but my business overall has made more money this year than it did last year, because of this online part of my business. It helped balance everything out. So I'm very, very grateful, because that was a fear of mine, walking away from something that you're comfortable with, to say, no, you're like, I know you don't agree with me on this, but I need to do this. This is going to help me reach more people. This is going to help me help more people do something that I firmly believe, which is that like everyone should be able to experience music in their own special way, not the way I want them to experience music, the way they want to experience music. Because for some people, that's playing a crazy guitar solo, and for some people it's just strumming some chords. And it's, who am I to judge what they want to do with music? But I want anyone who has a desire to experience music, I feel like they should be able to.
Your perspective is so fresh, and it's just so light, and it makes you feel like, if I want to shift gears, why can't I? Just because you don't have a degree, like you said, unless you're going to be a doctor or a dentist or something that actually requires something like that.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of people right now that are looking to shift careers, and they may want to do something that has nothing to do with their background. And so even hearing your story in that perspective, do you get to share parts of your story? I know there's some of it on your website, but with your students, and kind of, help them in that way too?
It's, a lot of my students, they'll follow me on Instagram, or they'll follow my Facebook. And I always do kind of like positive posts and stuff during the week. So I think they get little snippets of inspiration about my life. And I've been told, that I need to do more stuff like this. And I need to talk a little bit more about like my philosophies on teaching. Because like you say, it is very different than what a lot of people are hearing. And obviously, people are attracted to whoever, because they relate to that experience that the person's talking about. So it's definitely something I need to do more of. And I've been told that I need to do more, which is why when you guys asked me to do this, I was like, let's go for it. So.
Yeah.
Well, we're so glad you did. Oh my goodness. You have so many layers. I'm just sitting here thinking you're a cancer survivor, and you are a self-taught musician. You have pivoted in a huge career from a research institution where you got your degree to doing something on the creative side. I think there's just so much to you. And I was thinking the exact same thing as Renee asked that. I was like, yes, you need to be speaking your story so much more, because it's not just that you're a guitar teacher.
It's so funny because I'm just like, oh, I don't like, people, even influencers will be like, well, I have nothing special to talk about in my, so for me, because I've lived it, it seems so normal, but to anyone from the outside, they're like, no, that's actually really crazy. People don't do that. Like a lot of people don't do what you did. And I'm like, oh, really? So you don't, when you've lived through it, you don't realize sometimes how crazy the path is until you look back and you're like, yeah, I guess most people don't just like quit their job to become a musician.
So you talked a little bit about that, about quitting your job, and it sounds like it wasn't like a transition. You just made the decision after, I mean, you kept having music pop up in your life, and you're like, okay, I need to stop just recognizing it's there and do something with it because that's where my heart is. So did you just quit your job and then start teaching just like that?
So there was maybe like a minor transition. So I started teaching, I'm going to say like March or April of 2010. And my boss knew, I think she knew I wanted to like secretly be a rock star. So she was just like, when you go and, when you go to be a rock star, can you just give me 3 months notice that you're leaving? Because what I did at my work was very specialized. So I started teaching, and it was more for me to start saying, at this point, I guess I was doing market research without realizing I was doing market research. So I just started putting it out there that, hey, I'm available. I teach guitar. I started getting those initial students because you learn so much. I feel so bad for like the first 50 students I taught because, again, like I said, I had never taught before. So they were kind of like, unfortunately, my guinea pigs that I developed a kind of a teaching technique but what happened was I realized within, the first 2 to 3 months, I was like, okay, this is good. I'm getting some people, but I realized I was latching on to the comfort of my job. And, I will recognize that I'm in a different situation. I was renting an apartment. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a mortgage. I had very little responsibilities at, 26 years old compared to someone.
Still scary though. I'll throw that
out.
It's
still scary. Yeah, it's still scary. And I recognize, but I mean, I was leaving a job where I was making, $65,000 to $70,000 a year at 26, which is like, that's great. I mean, how do you walk away from benefits, from, a gym membership, all these great things? It was a great company to work for too. And, how do you walk away from that to go make, I mean, my first month in business, I think I made $400. I have the Excel sheet still. I could look. I think it was like $400 was my first month in business. And my first year in business, I only made $10,000. But to get back to the point, I was using my job as like a crutch, as like a safety net. And I recognized that. So after I started going for 3 months, I was like, I'm just going to tell them that's it. I'm going to give them my 3 months notice, which ended up being the beginning of August. So I think I gave notice in May, and my last day was the first week of August in 2010. And that was it. It was like, I had no more safety net. So it was like, either like you do this or you're going, like, because I was like, what's the worst case scenario? I just get another job. That was the worst case scenario. I would have to get another job, which I say I could live with, but no, I couldn't live with her. I wouldn't have done my job in the first place. So, I worked a lot of kind of temp jobs. My dad is a contractor, so I was kind of like his laborer when he needed an extra hand. I picked up, there was a local newspaper called Patch, so I drove around and took pictures of businesses and did descriptions. It was like, I did like these weird odd and end jobs for a few months until I was actually able to make enough money to pay my own bills with just teaching. And so that's what I did. And it was a wild ride, but it was fun.
For sure.
I love it. I don't think I could do it. That's what I have to get past, right?
Nobody thinks they can do it until they do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you kept figuring it out and discovering more along the way. There's no way to have the whole plan figured out when you started from, I'm a researcher and this is my industry to, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch gears and go to music, but you can't possibly have it all figured out.
Yeah. And I think, again, I think that goes back to being young and realizing that like you have a plan for life and life can throw you a giant curveball, such as 2020. And I think that's one strength that I have as like a business person is that I am quick to pivot when things change and I'm flexible. I hate change. I will be the first person to admit I hate change. My wife will move the couch from that side of the room to that side of the room, and it just totally throws me off. Hate change. I like things to be the same. But when something happens, for example, when, you know, we heard that COVID was coming, we went online like probably 2 or 3 weeks before all of my competitors did. I was preparing my staff for going online as soon as it touched the United States. I was like, just letting you guys, but I think also that's the benefit of me being a scientist and understanding science. And I was just like, listen, guys, we're just going to be prepared because people were getting scared. And I was like, all right, something's different about this. And we pivoted really quick. And we even had students who came to us from other music schools being like, we have no clue what's going on, but we want our child to like continue doing, or they have one child that did one instrument here and another child who did an instrument somewhere else. And like, can we just send both of our children to you? Cause you guys are like on top of your game. So I think that's one of my strengths is being flexible and able to adjust when things don't seem to always go the way you plan.
I was sitting here thinking about your mom and saying, don't give her the guitar. She's not going to play. What does she say now? But this is your career.
Like, I don't remember that I said that. No. You know, my mom has been one of those people who's always supported me no matter what. And, you know, people are like, oh, what did your parents think when you left? And I'm very fortunate to come from a very entrepreneurial family. I didn't know what that was. My grandfather, he was born in Italy and he came over here and he worked as a laborer for a while, but he started his own raincoat factory. So he had his own business. My sister has her own business. My dad had his, like everyone in my family has owned a business at some time in their life. So it wasn't like a foreign concept to them. So, you know, my dad was happy because I was living in his second floor apartment at the time. And he started seeing like all these people coming in with cases and he knew like I had band practice and stuff. So he was used to seeing like random musicians come to the house. But then he was like, there seems to be a lot of people like just coming in and out. And, so I just told him, I was like, oh yeah, I quit my job. And he was like, you did what? And I was like, yeah, but I was like, I have students. And he's like, okay, as long as you know what you're doing, like, that's fine. And no one ever told me like not to do it. If they were concerned, they didn't tell me.
Wow. It sounds like you have an incredible support system with your wife,
Yeah.
your parents, and I know you mentioned your sister.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even going to school for archaeology, my mom was like, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
So Laura,
what was the goal with that degree? I'm curious. Sorry, Renee. I keep cutting you off.
You know, I think I always eventually wanted to go into like paleontology, so dinosaurs, because I loved dinosaurs when I was a kid. And I love history in general. And I did a study abroad down in Belize, so I dug on the Mayan ruins, and I went to Pompeii, and I've been to China. So I liked the travel aspects of archaeology. I did not like the paperwork aspects of archaeology. So I mean, that would be something I would do for fun. Like I would literally pay someone to go dig on their dig site because it is fun. The actual work of digging in archaeology is fun. But it's the paperwork. And I think that's why I got a second degree in biology because I was like, really liked science. And I was like, maybe I should have something that's just a little bit more, you know, sellable as a career versus archaeology. So it was fun. So I think my parents were happy that I did a double major. So.
Well, Lauren, something tells me that you may get back to dinosaur hunting here in the future.
You never
20,
know.
40 years, you never know. So what would you say? So I feel like we could talk to you for a long time and pull so many more cool stories and adventures and things out of you. What is something that you would say or encourage somebody who's thinking maybe about a career shift, or maybe, you know, their career is non-existent right now and they need to find something. What kind of guidance or advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think the best thing for anyone, you know, there's never a perfect time. People are like, when do you quit your job? It's like, there's really never a perfect time to quit your job. They always say, this is one of my favorite quotes, like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So I know there's people out there and they like to plan, and I'm not a planner. I'm kind of like an action taker, if you haven't noticed. And I would recommend people like, do your research. Like, doing research is great, but if you really want to do something, you just have to start doing it. And if you're, you know, if you have a family, you have a mortgage, like obviously you can't quit your job. And I worked, you know, when I first started, like I said, I started building this teaching business while I was still working. So I went to work. I worked 7 o'clock in the morning till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which meant I could get home at 4 o'clock at night. So I worked from 4 o'clock at night, which was when I would take my first student, until about 8 o'clock at night. So I just literally worked all day to get it started. And, you know, I talked with my employer about going part-time. I couldn't go part-time. So then I was like, all right, well, I'm going all in. But that would be my recommendation is do something, because you never know where it's going to go. Even with like my online business, I didn't have this grand plan for it. I didn't even have a course in mind when I first started. You know, when I put my first YouTube video up, I didn't have, you know, a really big plan for that. I'm like, I'm just going to start this and see what happens. And you kind of go from there. I've never been a person to make a business plan. People ask me about that. They're like, you know, should I make a big business plan? And it's like, well, business plans, again, this is the ideal year because nobody put 2020 in their business plan. And all those business plans went out the window so, you know, you have to be flexible. So I wouldn't worry too much about planning. You know, a little bit of planning, having an idea, being educated about what you're doing, taking calculated risks, absolutely. But don't feel like you have to plan out every step just to get started. Getting started is the hardest step. And I think once you can get past that, you can start building momentum that way.
Very cool. Good words of advice.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off again.
Okay. I bit my tongue.
Well, I want to ask our big question that we ask every guest, and it was in the questionnaire too, but you know, the red bra developed by us saying, put your red bra on because it gives you confidence. It allows you to go out there and feel like it's something exciting. So when you think about it in that way, what is a moment of confidence for you? And maybe it was taking this leap, or if there's something else that you can think of, big or small.
Yeah. So, you know, again, it's taking that leap, I think is an important thing. And I know that might not feel very confident when you first do it, but the more you do it, the more it does become a confidence thing. You know, it was Renee was saying earlier, like, or maybe it was you were like, oh, you said you were an expert, and that showed confidence. And it was like, well, I didn't feel very confident at that point in that time. But the more I stepped into the role of what I was trying to create, it made me feel more confident. And there's things that still take me out of my comfort zone. But I think the sooner you get behind like the support system. So I talked about my mom, because my mom was always that support system when I was younger. And I think that was very helpful, that whenever I wanted to do something, I had someone who was like, go for it. You can do it. No problem. I don't think I ever was told no, that like I couldn't do something. And I think that's I'm very fortunate to have had that. So I think as an adult now, that's my confidence. That's my red bra moment, is being like, okay, I'm just going to step forward into this. Like, I'm going to own what I'm stepping into, and there's no going back. I'm not going to say no.
Lauren, to kind of follow up on that, when you say owning, and, you know, to kind of give you an example, not to put you on the spot, but can you give us an example of how you stepped into what you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, part of it, I think, would be the transition from me being just a musician to going into being like a business owner and owning a role of what you're going to do, or even just owning like who you are as a person.
Yeah. Or literally quitting your job and owning that.
Right. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's being completely responsible for who you are and what you want to do in life. And that, you know, I quit my job. It's no one else's fault except my own if I didn't make it. You know, so I think that's part of owning. You know, if you're going to make a decision, own it. You
Yeah.
know, find that support system. Find the people. If you need that extra push, find the people who are going to help you, give you that push. But if you're going to do something, don't go halfway and go all in. Like, go in, own it. You know, if you're gonna represent this, you know, if you're a beauty and makeup artist, like, go in, own it. Even if you never went to school for makeup and beauty, like, own it. Like, I own that I'm a guitarist and a guitar teacher. You know, obviously I've been doing it for years now, so that helped build the confidence, but I had to step into what I wanted to do. And that was going from being a scientist to being a musician. And I had to like own that if I was going to sell other people, that I could help them.
Yeah.
I
And
think that's the key. Go ahead.
I was going to say,
We both are enamored with you. We can't stop.
yeah, we're like, more.
My turn.
Now you know why my students love me. No, I'm just kidding.
You said it yourself. You have to, I mean, believing in yourself, even if you're quote unquote not qualified on paper, whatever that may or may not look like, that's the key. And I think you're walking the talk, you're doing it all, which is so cool. Tell us a little bit about your spectrum. Who do you teach? Or do you have a certain age range? And what are your courses like for our viewers and people who may want to come in contact with you?
Yeah, so my online course, so I do have like a free mini course. My website is laurenbateman.com, and it's /crash course, which is just like a little free intro, like really getting you started with the basics of guitar. And my courses are more aimed towards adults. I was never good at teaching kids. I can admit that. I always loved teaching adults. I particularly loved working with older adults because they liked a lot of the music that I liked. So that was great. I mean, not that I didn't love doing Taylor Swift all the time, or, you know, whatever the new band was. You know, I loved Fleetwood Mac and all that classic rock stuff. So, you know, my course is developed for an adult, whether you're an absolute beginner, never touched the guitar before, so I start from the beginning, or you're someone who's been kind of like my experience. You've been playing guitar for a while and you kind of have some things, but you don't know how to do other things, or you feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over. Because that's the point where I finally got help, where I was like, okay, I can kind of play the guitar, but it's like, I know this like one strumming pattern that I do for like every song. It was like, I maybe should like learn something else to do. So I really focus on kind of that beginner intermediate level. That's my favorite. Like I said, I am not like a super advanced guitar teacher, and I can own and accept that. But I love helping people get started.
Cool.
Yeah.
And people will walk away from your course knowing how to play a full song.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, there's a bunch of stuff in there now. Like there's finger picking. When I first started, it was just like the very beginner, and I keep adding stuff. So now you can learn how to finger pick. You learn how to do bar chords. There's some intermediate level stuff in there. I keep adding new stuff to it all the time. So it's kind of cool because, you know, I work with students, you know, just like your dad, and people will ask me questions and I'll be like, that's a great idea. I should make a course on that. Like, so I really let my students help me kind of develop what they want next. Like, what are you guys interested in learning? Or I'll see a question that keeps coming up. So it's really geared towards my students and what they want to do.
Have you had people that have come to you, they're interested, but they're afraid to even purchase the instrument? So do you have recommendations on where, if that's the hurdle for them?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, like, if you can't afford, because you know, like I said, I do work with a lot of older adults. I actually work with a lot of veterans too. So they're on kind of limited budgets. And I tell them, like, if you can get something used somewhere on like Facebook Marketplace, or like, you know someone who has a guitar that's they're not using, ask them. It might not be the greatest guitar. I always recommend people, particularly for acoustic guitar, if you can buy a guitar that's around $300, they are easier to play. But if you're on a limited budget and all you can afford is, you know, $100 guitar, then get that. And like I said, get started, start somewhere. And then if you really get into it, then you can save up and get that more expensive guitar. But I'm a big fan of Ibanez. They have their acoustic electric series, so they have a lot of guitars within the $300 to $600 range, and that's usually what I recommend for a lot of my students, especially females, because they have smaller, you know, I'm only 5'4", I'm not very tall, so we have shorter frames, so it's a little easier for them to hold the guitar.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for joining us. This was so fun. And I mean, your story is awesome. It's so inspiring with so many different ways that it can touch people. So we appreciate you taking the time and, you know, time and energy to hang out with us. So we do wrap every episode with a quote. So the one that we chose for you today was, "Nothing is impossible. The word itself says I'm possible." Audrey Hepburn.
Love it.
Yes, thank you so much. Before we sign off, Shauna, is there any other things that you wanted to ask?
No, I feel like I am going to start following you because this was great. And like I said before, I think there's so many different layers to you. So I'm excited to have our followers start following you. And hopefully we can convince you to do that motivational speech that needs to be done.
Well,
maybe we're going to have to do a part 2, right? You know,
that's fine. We can do it. We've done a part 2 before.
Awesome.
Part 2s are our favorite because then we get to follow up and see what's going on. So
there we go. Perfect.
And
we'll bring your dad on to play too, Renee.
Yeah. Ooh, pressure. I like it. We're so happy to have been connected with you and share your story and get it out there. And especially during quarantine, and people are looking for different things and creative outlets. I mean, this is an awesome opportunity to connect with, you know, someone who's so relatable and fun to learn an instrument. Do you sing as well?
I do. Yeah. So I'm a voice. I do voice and guitar. So yeah.
Ooh.
Another layer.
What if
part 2?
Yeah, I know. What if you can't sing? I'm sure you can't help the ones that can't.
I did. Yeah. Well, singing, I started right from the start. I took lessons for 10 years for singing. And then I did drums for a few years too. So I went all in.
Goodness.
See, you have to become what you say you're going to become. So I'm like, if I'm going to become a musician, I need to become a musician. So that's it. I owned it.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. It was so great to hang out with both of you today. And Lauren, thank you for your time. To all of our viewers and community and new to the Red Bra Project, welcome. If you like what you heard, share your story with somebody who could use Lauren's story to help inspire and motivate and encourage them. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and come hang out with us at the Red Bra Project on Instagram. And we'll make sure to follow up and connect with all of Lauren's ways that you can get connected with her and take some of her free courses too. So awesome. Thanks, guys. Everyone have a great night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.